All right, welcome to the first part of my longevity lecture. Let's get started. We have a lot to talk about. All right, so here you can see how the human body is made of. We know that the DNA creates those proteins, and the proteins make up living cells, and the cells make up the tissue, and then the tissue makes up the organs and the bones, and here we go. And that makes up the entire human body. All right, so here in the second page, you can see that we talk about DNA, gene, and mutation. We all know that the DNA is a long spiral made out of nucleotides, and there's four different types of pairs, AC and T and G. We're going to talk about this in a little bit more. And then genes, what is a gene? A gene is part of your DNA that codes for protein that has certain functions, in the body. And usually there are anywhere from 300 to like a million of those nucleotide pairs. Now on the left, you can see he's taken out part of the DNA, which is a gene, and that gene, codes for something. And then mutation plays a huge role when it comes to health and aging. And we're going to dive in, much deeper in that. And here you have another close-up of our DNA. And you might ask yourself, okay, what's up with those red little, balls sitting on the surface of our DNA? These are methyl groups, and these methyl groups are made out of one carbon atom and three hydrogen atom attached. And some of them come with you, when you're born, and some, later on in life, and they control gene expression. Basically, they control which gene has to turn on and off. To give an analogy, a traffic light. The traffic light is like our genome, right? It controls the traffic. If the traffic light works, it can regulate traffic, with no issues. However, what happens when the traffic light is dysfunctional? Then, the cars have to stop, it slows down the entire traffic, and then they have to wait till the one on the left goes, the one on the right goes, and so on. So it slows everything down. Worst case scenario, what if the traffic light doesn't work at all? Then you have cars crashing because it shows green on both sides, boom, and everything is messed up. Well, as an analogy, our genome works in a similar way, and these methyl groups are responsible for those functions. Then here you can also see those histones, where the DNA is tightly wrapped around, and they're so tight wrapped around, it also silences some of those genes. We're going to talk about this more in a little bit. And here in the next page, you can see a chromosome. Now, the reason why the chromosome is crossed out, because it's not a correct representation of what the chromosome will looks like, because it looks like, the DNA is trapped inside the chromosome, which is not correct. The real representation is that the chromosome itself is your entire DNA. As you can see, as we unwrap the chromosome, you can actually see those histones where the DNA is wrapped around, and the tie-in string. And if you go all the way to the right, you can actually see that the entire string is your DNA. Now, to blow your mind, if I would stretch out one chromosome, and keep in mind, those chromosomes are microscopic, you can even see them with the naked eye. I can stretch them out, to 6 feet. To put that in perspective, I'm a big guy, I'm 5'10", and 6 feet is even longer than myself. That's how much length we have in just one, DNA strand. Now, to blow your mind even more, if I would stretch out every single DNA in your body, it will go back and forth approximately 8 to 10 times from Earth to the moon. Now think about this. This is how much DNA, length of DNA we have in our body. That blows my mind. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit more on the chromosome. You inherit a chromosome from your mom and from your dad, and as you can see from the left to the right, all the genes are in the right, place. However, there could be a slight variation or mutation when those genes are not connecting the right way. And on the next page, when we zoom in a little bit more, you can actually see that A always binds with T. Remember, we talked about the base pairs of the nucleotides, and these are the four nucleotides that pair. And as you can see, A always fits with T, and G perfectly fits with C. However, to make it simple, if A would try to bind with C, you can see that there's no connection. It doesn't bind correctly, and that would be considered a variation, or like a gene mutation. And it could be something very simple as, having a green eye and a brown eye, or having like a white patch on your hair or your beard. It could be unique to you, or it could be, from generation to generation. But the one we are concerned about is the most common gene mutation in the world. About 55% of the world's population have this gene mutation. It's called the MTFHR, known as methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase gene. And that gene can give you some serious troubles. All right, so here in the picture, you can see those two most common gene mutations, MTFHR mutations, the C677T and the A1298C. Now, you can inherit one from your parents, or worst case scenario, if both have it, then you might have both genes broken. And what does it mean when you have that MTFHR mutation? Okay, so the MTFHR mutation is what converts nutrients in its usable form. As an analogy, if I take the crude oil out of the ground and I try to put that in my gas tank, the car can do nothing with it, right? So that oil needs to be refined to gasoline, and now the car can use it. Where it's very similar in the human body. A lot of those nutrients need to be converted. If I take the chicken, the chicken can do nothing. The chicken has to be converted to amino acids. Folic acid, which we talk about more, is the main issue here. Folic acid is the synthetic form of methylfolate, which the body cannot convert if you have that MTFHR mutation. And what happens is you have an accumulation of folic acid in your body and nutrient deficiency, because methylfolate is one of the most important nutrients when it comes to DNA methylation. And so some of these conditions and diseases, you can see here, there was not even almost enough space to add them all. Mood disorders, Down syndrome, Alzheimer, ADD, ADHD, autism, aging, it speeds up the aging process. You're more prone to addiction, recurrent pregnancy loss, miscarriages, thyroid dysfunction, even Hashimoto, weight gain, diabetes, autoimmune disease, chemical sensitivities, cancer, high blood pressure, stroke, heart disease, fibromyalgia, and the list goes on and on. Now, these are very common. We have these conditions on a daily basis. Now, what's happening is when you have any of these, right, you go to the doctor is matching your condition with a disease, and then he just, gives you drugs, for it to cover the symptom, but it's not the root cause of why you have any of these. And many of our healthcare system would recognize that more, it would change everything. So let's talk about a little bit more about methylation. Remember, methylation is the traffic light that controls the traffic. And here's some of the main function of methylation, if it works the way it should. Turning genes on and off, building and repairing DNA and RNA. It reduces the aging process. It reduces the risk of heart attack and stroke by 75%. It also reduces the risk, it also balances out homocysteine. You can deal with stress much easier, and it also maintains good mental health, and also processes hormones, detoxifies the chemicals, and chemicals from and heavy metals, not only from the body, also from the brain. Fighting infection, building immune cells, and supports neurotransmitters to prevent depression, anxiety, and mental health disorders. And this is, I think, one of the most common conditions we have these days, right? Now, what happens, to explain it a little bit more easier? If the body, when I say the body, I also mean the brain, doesn't have the raw material it needs to fully function, then not only you have a nutrient deficiency, but also when you have that mutation, that folic acid cannot be converted and it starts accumulating in the body and causes many issues we just talked about. Now, to put that in perspective, what is ADD and ADHD? It's basically too many thoughts are coming in at the same time, and you cannot focus on one. As an example, in a healthy person, a thought comes in, you dismantle the thought, next thought comes in, dismantle the thought, next one comes in, right? So you can always focus on one or two. Now, with somebody that has that gene mutation and might be diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, thought comes in, it can dismantle it. The next thought comes in, can dismantle it. The next thought, now you have 10 thoughts at the same time. and you cannot even pay attention to all of them, so you're all over the place, and it's very hard for you to retain, information like when you're in school or anything, right? Because you just, all over the place. Now, what we do, well, we give those people, Adderall or Ritalin, which speeds up the nervous system, just to like, get it up to speed with your brain, so that you can handle, all the thoughts at the same time. But we actually should do just the opposite: calm the brain and calm the body, and that way, yeah, I mean, don't even get started, because that's, another topic. It could be a lecture on its own. And then also, it produces powerful antioxidants, and it also works with vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, amino acids. They also, need to be used and also converted to that form, and that methylation is responsible for that. So here we have another close-up of your DNA strain. And remember those methyl groups that attach themselves to the surface of DNA that control, methylation. Remember, they're made out of a carbon atom attached with 3 hydrogen atom, and these are the ones that control, methylation. So now, what can interfere with our methylation? There's many things. Environmental factors, pollutants, if you live in a big city, chemical toxins, which we have in our food supply, in the air, chemicals, in our cleaning supply, even some of our makeup and stuff. Then pesticides is a big one. Pesticides we're exposed to more than anywhere here in the United States. We're spraying pesticides, insecticides on everything, and even some of the organic food has some residues on it. And I want to put that in perspective, because, this is how bad it is. Like, if you eat non-organic berries, especially berries, because their skin is like a sponge, it sucks everything up. Now, there was a study I've seen that was shocking. Strawberries that were sprayed with pesticides, when they squeezed the juice out, there was so much toxins and pesticides in there. They were able to use the same juice and re-spray the crops. And now when we eat that, on daily basis. So if you're not a big fan of organic food, but there's one thing you should definitely stay away from, is organic berries. Then we have heavy metal toxicity, again, our food supply, in the air, some of the cookingware, and also in our water supply. Then we already talked about the gene mutations, the MTFHR and other associated genes, mutations, and then also the, most common one is the C667T and the A1298, which can inherit from your parents. Also, nutritional problems, stress, could be mental or physical. Medications, we have antacids. Antacid medications, the worst, because it kills your stomach acid. And about 75% of Americans, over 40, are deficient in stomach acid. And when you constantly, chronically have acid reflux, most people think that's a sign that you have too much stomach acid, and now they take those antacid pills. It's actually quite the opposite. That means you don't have efficient, stomach acid. Now, that means you have a hard time, dismantling, breaking down some of the nutrients, and some of the nutrients come with, pathogens and stuff. So some of them, if they don't get, burned with the acid, they might make it into your gut and causes issue. And the reason why the esophagus sphincter doesn't close when you have low stomach acid is because the stomach acid needs to reach an acidity between 1 and 3. However, if that acid is low, for the most part, it can also not reach that acidity, which makes it hard for breaking down food. But also the esophagus sphincter, the lid, that covers the stomach, doesn't recognize it. It doesn't get the signal to close. And now we start digesting the food, the stomach acid starts secreting, and that lid stays open. And now all the splashes from the acid come up to your esophagus, and that's what you feel as heartburn, the burn. And then we also have methotrexate, which is a medication that's used for cancer. Metformin, which is a diabetes medication, but the metformin we're going to talk about more, but that one is also used for longevity and anti-aging quite a bit, because it has a lot of great benefits. However, it can interfere with the methylation if you take it every day and if you take too much. Then we have nitric oxides, which, it's like a kind of like a painkiller. I think doctors, dentists use it, here and there to like, calm you down, but it's not very common. And then we have antiseptics, which is, for infections. Then, as we just said, reduces hyaluronic acid for digestion, which causes a lot of these issues. And then as we age, the methylation can also be reduced, and especially if you're missing those raw materials. And then diet, alcohol, and drugs, of course, no brainer. All right, now unlocking the MTFHR mystery. So we already talked quite a bit about folic acid. When you have that MTFHR gene mutation, you cannot convert folic acid to its usable form, methylfolate. And that causes a lot of issues because of the accumulation and because of nutrient deficiency. And you might say, oh, if I have a nutrient deficiency, I just, supplement for it. Well, yes and no. Keep in mind that most supplements on the market are synthetic. They're made in the lab. Like folic acid, as an example, is fully synthetic. You cannot find that anywhere in nature. So that means when you consume folic acid, you cannot convert it. And folic acid you can find also in a food supply, which we could talk about it in a little bit to dive in deeper how bad it is. And another issue with folic acid is the buildup can also cause, cancer and prostate cancer. So folic acid, whether you have that MTFHR mutation or not, I would not take it. Why take in something that's synthetic if you have the opportunity to take the methylated form? Now, the big question is, why are we spraying folic acid on a methylfolate on all the food supply? That's a good question. And also, I'll give you an example on B vitamins. The B vitamins are so important, for DNA methylation to control all those functions. I challenge you, go home and check your supplement, check your multivitamin or check your B complex and go to B12. If it says it's made out of cyanocobalamin, it's made out of cyanide. And yes, I'm talking about that cyanide we use for chemical weapons and for poison. We make B12 out of cyanide. Now, again, you have that mutation, you will have a hard time. But honestly, even if you don't have the mutation, you shouldn't consume cyanide. And it all comes down to the money. It's much, much cheaper to produce. That's why they're using it. And then let's get to the big issue here, fortified foods, or sometimes it says enriched, with vitamins. And that is probably the biggest issue. Remember, about 55% of the world's population have the gene mutation. Now, we cannot consume folic acid. It's poison for us, right? And we eat breakfast cereals, bread, white rice, flour, margarine, salt, snack bars, juices, baby formula, dairy products, edible oils, meat alternatives, and the list goes on and on. And now we get bombarded with folic acid every single day, and we cannot convert it, and we have to build up, and it can cause cancer. It started in about 1930, 1933. It was in good faith to enrich the food with more, vitamins and minerals, because after the World War, there was a lot of suffering and depleting of nutrients. And so maybe back then it was meant for a good reason, but maybe they didn't know that so many people have that MTFHR mutation back then. But we still, till today, we're still spraying all our food supply with that folic acid. And that can cause all those issues we talked about: high blood pressure, ADD, ADHD, high homocysteine levels, depression, miscarriages. The list goes on and on. Now, I give you an example, a real life example. I had a client, the kid was diagnosed with ADD, ADHD. And she noticed that every time the kid was drinking orange juice and eating a cereal for breakfast, that's when the kid was like all over the place, high energy, couldn't focus, and was like a wrestling match to get the kid in the car and to school. And so they, got the kid to the doctor. Doctor said, "Oh yeah, the kid has, ADD, so here we go, take the drugs, speed up the nervous system so I can keep up with the fast paced." And then later when they came to me with the MTFHR gene testing, and sure enough, the kid had a broken gene. So now what we did was we removed all the fortified foods. And I do understand for kids, it's not easy. So it will take some serious conversation with the kids and some education, and exchanged, throw away all the supplements and only supplemented with methylated supplements, anything that helps with the methylation process, such as SAMe, TMG, methylated B vitamins, methylfolate, and so on. And in just 2 days, the kid was improving. And now it's been a month, and the kid is like a newborn. She got off the drugs, and everything is back to normal. And see, that's the problem with our healthcare system, because, when we have any of those conditions we just talked about, this list of conditions, right? We go to the doctor is matching the condition with the drug and sends you home, and that's it. The doctor's not going to go down the rabbit hole, and try to find out what could cause that. Let's do the gene testing, come back. It just takes too much time. And of course, there are some doctors that do that, but most of them no, because they only give like 10 to 15 minutes for each patient, because they have so many expenses, to pay for everything. And then also, if the doctor will go down the rabbit hole, that time the doctor spends on researching, the insurance doesn't pay him. So why would he do it? But if you come to us as a functional nutritionist or naturopathic doctor, at the ArizonaNutritionist.com, that's what we do. We actually take that time, go down the rabbit hole, go down to the root cause, and find out, okay, why do you have this condition? What causes it? And for the most part, there's always a way to find it. So I think I can say about myself, I'm a human investigator, because I'm investigating why you have this disease or the condition. And for the most part, it's a methylation issue. And the good news is it's fixable. It's fixable. You just have to know the right person to help you. If you need help, reach out to us, ArizonaNutritionist.com, and our email is info@ArizonaNutritionist.com. All right, this was the first part. Stay tuned for part 2.